stayed in and been in luxury or whatever a God would live in. His ultimate pleasure, whatever he wanted, but he gave that up to come to seek and save that which was lost. And that is the black man and woman in the hells of North America. And he stayed with us for 3.5 years. But prior to that, they say that he was in and out of America for over 20 years. They say that he visited every inhabited place on the planet. Now, we don't know how many inhabited places there are. We know of the ones that we know about, but there are some that we don't know about. But he visited every one. They say he spoke 16 languages, and he wrote 10 of those languages. And they say he even went down into Africa and learned to speak the language of the birds. We'll go into that at another time. But to show you that's what a God was doing, one who loved us enough that he would leave his seat, travel around the world seeking information that he could give to a man that he would choose to stand in this place at a later date. So for 3.5 years, he was among us. And as I just stated, he chose a man that could stand in his place, a man whose mind was fashioned in such a way that the God himself, that he said he had enough of the original materials in him that he could stand in the place of God. And the man that he chose, we say that he is a Georgia-born black man in our history. He was born, Georgia produced some giants, but this one is the biggest of them all. Because he was saddled with a responsibility that no other man in the annals of history had ever been saddled with. And his job was to raise a dead black man and black woman. People who had been destroyed from civilization. People who had been brought so low that they had said that of us, our people, that we weren't just lost, we were irredeemable, irretrievable. They even went as far as to say that we were dead. And Elijah, I let it out. But that man was saddled with that responsibility to wake us up, stand us up, and put us back where the enemy has brought us down to. So for those of us who are present today, we say that he is the baddest, boldest, most courageous black man that has ever lived other than his teacher, God in person, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So brothers and sisters, we are a blessed people today. And the reason we are blessed is because those first two came. But they loved us so much that even though the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, like his teacher, had to leave, but he left a man in his stead. To stand in his place. And obviously this man had enough of the original materials that he too could stand in the place of the gods. And the man that I'm talking about, he's known all over the world. He's hated primarily the most, not all over the world necessarily, but in the country where he lives, he's hated the most. Yes, the place of his birth is where he's hated the most. And his greatest detractors, like his teacher, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, was hated because he was just telling the truth. So the man that I'm talking about, like the two before him, he was bold. He's courageous. He is the door. I don't care what anybody says. He is the last man standing. I could call the roll right now, but it's not necessary because if you put up a clean glass next to a dirty one, the people know which one to choose. And the man that I'm talking about is the clean glass in our midst today. And he's none other than our illustrious leader, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. It is in those three holy and righteous names I greet you all once again with the greeting words of peace in the Arabic language, the original language of our fathers, of Assalamu alaikum. And if anybody doesn't know what that means, that simply means peace be unto you. Right now we're in a war zone, and what we need is peace, brothers and sisters, because the very essence of our houses are being disrupted. And when I say our houses, I'm not talking about the physical house of brick, mortar, wood, nails. I'm talking about this house. It's being disrupted. That the mind is being upset. The heart is being upset because in the book of Luke, it says that men's hearts were failing them from what they see coming onto the earth, which is no more than the chastisement of Allah for man's wrongdoing and his disobedience to the man in our midst today. His teacher, his warner, his guide, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So right now, as I say that, we want to thank everyone who submitted to our check procedure. For today, you know, we're in a very dangerous time. And we got to check everything. Starting with ourselves first. We got to check ourselves. You know, when you leave the house, of course, you check your physical self. Tie on straight, shirt right, you know, got my wallet, got my money, you know, all that. But you got to check your own spirit. Because how we treat one another once we walk outside the confines of our abodes is going to cause us or cause how we deal with other people to affect somebody else that's black like us. Let me give you an example. I got this from student minister Jabril. I'm sure he don't mind if I borrow it. But what he said is, he said, we have to be careful how we treat people in general. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said it this way. He was talking to the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. He said, brother, Prophet Muhammad said that, we're not really Muslims. We're not even righteous people if we don't want for our brother what we want for ourselves and our sisters, what we want for ourselves. He said, but Jesus said it a little bit differently, brother. He said, Jesus said, do unto others as you have others do unto you. And he said, brother, did you know that that is the best religion for man? He didn't say just the black man. He said man in general, the best religion. He said, because the way we treat each other, the problems that we have with our husband, our wives, our children, our friend, more than likely is something that we did or said to them that if we had put ourselves in their places, we would not want it to be done to us. Think that over. So back to what Brother Jabril was teaching. He was talking about how, you could be driving down the street in your car. And somebody this guy, this woman in the car, they just zigzagging all in and out. You trying to get somewhere because you're trying not to be late to your appointment. And when you try to get around this person, they move with you and all that. And then you pull up beside them, and who else is it? It's an old white man. And we let down our window, and give him everything but the kitchen sink. We throw all the pipes and everything else at him. As a matter of fact, we did throw the sink at him. And he looked over, and he didn't say nothing. He drove on, went on to his job. Went into the building where he works, went into his office, put on a black robe, zipped it up, grabbed his gavel, walked out to the stand and sit down, and they called him the Honorable so-and-so. But anyway, there's a young black man or a young black woman who's sitting out there, first time ever coming before a judge. And really what they had was a misdemeanor. But the thing that caused that judge to judge them was how they remembered another black person who he just passed on the road, cussed him out, called him all kinds of names, and because of how we treated him, this is how he treats that young brother, that young sister. He throws the same kind of spirit on them that we threw on him. And now they're going to jail for a long time for something they probably could have walked out of there with, just because of how we treated somebody else. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said the best religion for us is do unto others as we will have others do unto you. How about that? Ain't that a beautiful thing? So even today, family, when we think about it, and we know some Negroes. We know some wicked white folks. But even in our lessons, we are taught, obey those in authority, even if they don't believe as you believe. Yeah. Why? Because down the road, it can affect somebody else who's black like us, who may not deserve that person who may be in a high position to be judged over them. So we're setting the tone for how they're going to be treated. Do unto others as we want others to do unto you. Beautiful, brothers and sisters. I just want to read just a couple of things, and I'm going to get out of the way because we got a beautiful brother coming up. He's going to share a few words for it with us. And just give me a moment. I just want to read something from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. I mean, all the great things, the wonderful things that could have been said about him. Here's a man that has no fear. Walks up into the belly of the beast and tell the beast where he's showing out and wrong. Oh yeah, November the 16th, 2017, walked up into Washington, D.C. at the Watergate Hotel and told the truth. Not out of arrogance or pompousness, but out of sheer righteousness. And his job is to tell the truth and speak strong truth to power. He said, he gave a warning and a final call. Sounds like our paper? Yeah, you should be reading the final call, because in it is a guide to get through the difficult time that we've all entered into. But listen to this. The Honorable Louis Farrakhan speaking. He says, you Muslims who are present, in the Quran, God and Satan are having a talk. And God is saying to Satan, I have judged you to be erring. Satan knows he's wrong. Any devil knows they're wrong. So God said to Satan, as Satan asked him, respite me, delay my doom. Because Satan was doomed from the day he was made. And God said to him, surely you are of the respited ones. And Satan responded to God saying, I'm going to come after them in your straight path. He's talking to God. That's got to be a bad dude. Satan must have had some juice. He's going to tell God what he's going to do, and then he ain't afraid what's going to happen. I guess he figured, you said I'm done, so I'm going to tell you the truth. For one time, I'm going to tell the truth. I'm coming at them in your straight path. Then he goes on. He says, and I'm going to come to them from their right, from their left, and from before and behind them. I'm going to make all of them deviate. Think that over. Brothers and sisters, what is Satan talking about? Your straight path. Well, Islam is the nature of Almighty God, isn't it? So is Satan saying that he's going to creep up into Islam and find a way to cause the followers and believers of Almighty God Allah to deviate using his nature? Emphatically, yes. Oh, yeah. You know, we talk about several kinds of people that are in the house. There is the steadfast believer, the foremost believer, and then there's the ordinary believer. But then there's another group called the hypocrites. Then there's a group called the agent. Well, wait a minute, what's the difference? Well, you know, the agent, you know, what he does is he's hired by somebody outside of the teachings. His job is to come in and find a disgruntled believer and then proceed to talk to that believer, feeding his or her disgruntledness to make them deviate from the path. So they slide up to you, brother, they was wrong for doing that to you. We know you get papers and everything, but you couldn't get them this week. They ain't had to talk to you like that. Yeah, you're right. Now you falling into it. Remember now, the only somebody who's benefiting out of this is the agent, because the agent is getting paid. But the hypocrite, and when I say hypocrite, everybody who, says something about what happened to them, that don't make them a hypocrite just by saying it. It's what you do afterwards that cause you to become a hypocrite. So now if you're going to start to go to other people based on what the agent just said to you and you start spreading that gossip, now we have become a hypocrite. Because as soon as somebody slide up on us and start talking about somebody in the Nation of Islam, what are we taught? Well, you know what? I'm going to be the devil's advocate just for a moment. Brother Calvin, I saw Brother Calvin, he was down doing such and such and such. Now, if I'm telling Brother David that, the first thing Brother David got to say is, well, hold on for a minute. There go Brother Calvin right there. Brother Calvin, come here, brother. Come here. Check this out. Brother Joseph wants to say something to you. Because why? If I'm right, what I'm telling David for, I should be going to Calvin with the problem, right? That's how we destroy wickedness, slack talk, wrongdoing, backbiting. We nip it in the bud before it even gets a root to grow. Y'all all right with that? All praise is due to Allah. I don't want to teach no lecture, but I had to get that off my chest just real quick, because sometimes in the house, if we start to make progress, somebody always come up and got something negative to say about what's going on. Most recently, we had a little oil spill up in here. Unfortunately, it wasn't our oil, because we'd be living large, but we we could use an oil gusher for ourselves right now. But unfortunately, there was some faultiness in the pipes in the basement, and we got to the bottom of it. It took a minute, because we had to keep having our people research it and find out where the problem was. Well, we found it by the grace of Allah. And we're having our meetings again, and hopefully those who let the oil run them out, I hope that they know that Allah got some real burning oil coming down the road. And if you can get pushed out by this, then you ain't going to be able to stand what's coming down the pipe. But hold on, brothers and sisters, all of us, hold on to the handle that won't break. And the handle that I'm talking about, yes, it's Islam, but it's the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan in our midst today. Go where he says go. Stay away from where he says stay away from. For as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said of him, he will get us across the lake or the river on his shoulders, and he won't say, look what I have done. He will say, look what God has done. Y'all all right, family? So at this time, I'm going to stick a pin in that for right now, and we're going to bring to the roster another student in the ministry, great helper. You can catch him on Wednesday nights. We have our Wednesday night, community meeting study group, if you will. Then on Fridays, he's back out again at our Friday study group. He's a wonderful soldier and helper. So let's bring him to the roster right now. Student in the ministry, David Hassan. Bring him on with a rousing round of applause.
In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and that Muhammad is indeed his messenger. I greet you in the greeting words of peace and paradise, as we say in the Arabic language, Assalamu alaikum. How's everybody feeling this morning? All praise is due to Allah. And I just want to start off by thanking Allah for waking me up this morning, giving me an opportunity to live. And definitely want to thank Minister Roddy for giving us an opportunity to speak to you this morning. I appreciate Brother Joseph speaking to the condition because some things might be on the back of your mind, but we really need to start moving on. Is that right? Because at the end of the day, the soldiers have been here, and the soldiers will be here. Is that right? If we trip over what we're seeing today, what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told us is coming is far worse. Is that right? He said this is just the beginning of sorrows, not for you, but for America. So if you attach yourself to something that is crumbling and falling, what do you think is going to happen to us if we don't have a shelter, if we don't have a refuge? Is that right? But we're waiting on the refuge to come, but it's for us to build that refuge. Is that right? We don't believe in no spook God today. So we thank Allah for giving us a man in this time who is a divine reminder of our responsibility as men and women in our community. We thank Allah for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and his chief student, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So moving on. Everybody all right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Brother was just reminding me of something we were reading in the study group a couple weeks back, and the minister was referring to Jesus. And going back to attitude, because since I've been in Philadelphia, I've heard Minister Rodney talk a lot about this attitude of receptivity. And, the minister said here on page 92, he said, Jesus said, "Blessed are you when men shall revile you and say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven." Jesus is saying again, take the attitude that you are blessed when people speak evil of you, persecute you, say all manner of evil against you falsely for his sake. Don't think that it is a curse. Think it is a blessing. Keep that attitude and your will grow stronger to resist the persecution and the evil speaking of those who speak evil against you. Blessed are the meek, they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are they which hunger for and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. So he goes on. But he's basically saying a little later that you and I are the salt of the earth, and what would the earth be without us? So see your value in this thing, huh? Okay, all praise is due to Allah. So, man, so much going on. And Minister Farrakhan also said, dealing with making our community a safe and decent place to live, he said that all growth is change. And that pattern of growth and change is dictated and directed by the evolutionary law of God that exists in nature and all of his creation. We call him in English the Lord. In Arabic, the word for Lord is Rab. From that you get Rabbi, or teacher or nurturer. Rab means as an attribute of God, one who nourishes a thing, making it attain stage after stage until it reaches its eventual perfection. But it is the Lord who set that law in motion. That law is in existence for all living things, and we live in a universe of life that is constantly undergoing change. Y'all still with us here? Okay, all praise is due to Allah. So Minister Farrakhan said, make our community a safe and a decent place to live. But he added something on to that. He said, accept the responsibility. That's big, man. We say some pretty powerful things about the black man in this house. Is that right? Yes, and the black woman. Yes, but we have a responsibility that comes with that knowledge. To accept means to consent to receive, to believe, or come to recognize. So what Minister Rodney is saying about that spirit of receptivity, see, to accept means I have to agree to receive it first. And when you study these teachings, there's something in it that connects to your very nature. There's a nourishing property in the word that when you allow it into your own self, it naturally connects with something, brings something out of you that this world's education was never able to do. You start believing black people can do things that you never thought we could do. But we've already done it. But Jesus said, greater work shall you do in this time. It might be hard to believe at first. To believe or come to recognize. See, that word nourishes us, and it's not that you would find God in some spooky way in yourself, but you will begin to build God. You will begin to build God up in yourself, in your own building, in your own temple, that it would begin to manifest, and we would recognize God in the people. We would recognize God in you, recognize God in our women. Is that all right? That's the work that we should be doing today. We don't wait on God. God is coming in person today. All praises are due to Allah. So responsibility, that implies ownership. Is that right? And taking ownership, man, we cannot continue to blame other people for our condition. Is that right? You can't blame mother. You can't blame your father. You can't blame your teachers. You can't blame the judge. You can't blame the mayor. You can't blame the world. You can't blame the white man. You got to ask yourself, what am I doing to contribute to my own problems today? You can identify the cause of the problem, and we most certainly didn't bring ourselves over here on a luxury cruise liner. Is that right? We know who brought us over here. But once the problem has been identified, the solution is your responsibility, my responsibility. Is that right? So we got to get busy now and not focusing on problems. See, Minister Farrakhan said you have to ask God, why did you permit this to happen to us? I'm looking up, but there's nothing up there. We have to ask God, why did you permit this? Like they asked of Jesus, why was the child born blind? They said, was it the mother that sinned? Was it the father that sinned? And Jesus said, no, the child was born blind that the work of God could be made manifest in that child. Well, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said the work of God is the resurrection of a mentally dead, morally dead, spiritually dead people. Is that right? Don't we need some work? All praise is due to Allah. But we got to rise above emotion because, as Brother Joseph was saying, some of us got PhD degrees in pointing out problems of other people. But we got GED degrees in coming up with solutions. And I'm not knocking GED because I don't even have a degree. But one thing I can tell you about Mr. Muhammad's degrees, you get in the classroom with Mr. Muhammad, he'll do for you in one day what this world has never been able to do for us. The education of this world has never been designed to help us to change our condition or solve the problems in our neighborhoods. Is that right? So come on and get with Muhammad and start dealing with the solutions. But we can't change our community if we don't change ourselves. You can't. This is why we're still mentally enslaved and bound, because we curse the world, we curse our condition, we curse one another, but meanwhile we nourish the own cause of our suffering and our hearts. We treat ourselves the way the white man treated us. We treat our brothers the way the white man treated us. We treat our sisters the way the world has treated us. We even called ourselves by the same names that they called us. So how can you curse the world and still think that you're going to change your condition when you act like the world? There's got to be an inner change. It has to be a commitment. We have to understand that we got to change our condition ourselves. So what did Honorable Elijah Muhammad say? He said unity, right, will solve not some of our problems, but he said 95% of our problems. Is that right? But you can't unite with people who are arrogant, and we can go down the whole list. Proud, vain, destructive, right? So Minister Farrakhan is bringing back the idea that we have to be tolerant. We have to be humble. Is that right? We have to be merciful. We have to remove all selfishness and misery from ourselves. On a lighter note, my wife and I have been married happily going on 14 years. All praise is due to Allah. I know we had a singles event here last night, didn't we, in the region? But one thing I realized, that you will never realize how selfish you are until you get married. Did y'all hear me? You might do great things in the community. You might shovel your neighbor's snow. You might give, donate, and do all this stuff in the world. And people may, that's a good brother right there, huh? But you're selfish. When it come down to that last slice of pizza, or that last slice of bean pie, and it's a good bean pie too. Brothers, the toilet seat never even would have been a conversation if we weren't selfish. If there's one cup of coffee left in the pot and you in a rush to get to work, and hopefully if you're married, you're working, but you got to go, is that right? White man said be there at 9 o'clock. Are you just going to drink the last cup and roll, or are you going to make another pot for it? You understand what I'm saying? This is very, very simple and basic things I'm saying, but when you're by yourself, you're comfortable, is that right? You don't got to think about nobody else. But in terms of unity, Minister Farrakhan said you're not married because you say I do, right? That's just the beginning process. You have the intention of being united. But in terms of our religion, in terms of our organizations, whether you're a Pan-Africanist, a Hebrew Israelite, a Muslim, a Christian, we all can say we want unity, but if we're not putting in any work in ourselves, we will never be united. It's a good talk. It's a good look. But the internal work is not being done, and we have to learn to grow together as one. Are y'all all right? All praise is due to Allah. So learning to be more careful with one another, be more mindful, more thoughtful, remaining conscious that if it's not good for the whole, it's not good for the individual. Understand, our babies are the ones who are suffering because the ones that are over their head are not uniting, working together, and submitting to one God. So our feelings, our emotions, our desires will never be a substitute for our self-development. If we're not growing, our relationships will not grow. Do you bear witness? If we're not improving, our communities are not improving. If we're not changing, our condition is not changing, but our unity depends on it. Our babies depend on us. So unity is a big word, but petty people and petty agendas will always be an impediment to our people coming together in unity, Minister Farrakhan said. And what a terrible body we would be if everybody wanted to be the head, nobody wanted to be the foot. So I close with this. Ms. Farrakhan said, why is there a challenge to change? He said, 18 months ago, by the grace of God, I was on my deathbed. But God brought me back from that, and it was in that was produced in me a change. Sometimes the challenge to change is a painful experience, but because pain is the mother of growth, pain is the mother of change. When you know you've done something that brought pain, that pain is to tell you that it is time to change. So as you listen to Minister Rodney today, accept the word, receive the word, but get ready for the work that's coming behind the word, because we in the Nation of Islam are going to be the leaders and going out amongst our people. Not to judge them, not to debate and argue, but to be an example of the change that we want to see. Thank you as I greet you in peace. Let's bring back to the roster Minister Joseph Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum.
Keep that applause going for our brother, student in the ministry, David Hassan. All praise belongs to Allah. I just want to add one correction to what my brother just said. He said, Minister Joseph, I am a student in the ministry. The Honorable Louis Farrakhan didn't make me a minister yet, so I'm a student like everybody else. But thank you, brother. Anyway, all praise is due to Allah. So brothers and sisters, just real quick, I'm going to read something. And this is such a beautiful, do we read the Quran? Praise be to Allah. Well, we should be. Just really quick. Surah 101 is entitled The Calamity. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, the calamity. What is the calamity? And what will make thee know how terrible is the calamity? The day we're in, men will be as scattered moths, and the mountains will be as carded wool. Then as for him whose measure of good deeds is heavy, he will live a pleasant life. And as for him whose measure of good deeds is light, the abyss is the mother to him. And what will make thee know what that is? A burning fire. Have we seen California lately? Is it on fire? Yes, sir. I mean, is it burning? I mean, it's coming on down. Yeah. Then you got these big snowstorms coming, rain, floods. Everything is on this world today. So, with that being said, since we know that all these calamities are on this world, we have a brother that's about to come to the rostrum now. He's going to go deeper into it and explain more into why these things are happening. So open up your hearts, open up your minds to a brother who was sent by the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. He is a helper in the cause of Islam and the fight today that the black man and his woman is on, helping the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. So let's bring to this rostrum the Delaware Valley Student Regional Minister, our brother, Student Minister Rodney Muhammad. Let's bring him on with a rousing round of applause. Assalamu alaikum.
All right. Assalamu alaikum. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, the one God to whom praise is due, the Lord of the worlds, we thank Almighty God who reveals all truth, sends all prophets, of whom we make no distinction. We thank him indeed for Moses and the Torah. We thank him for Jesus and the gospel. We thank him for Muhammad and the revelation of the Holy Quran. As a student of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's life-giving message, I'm most thankful to Allah for intervening in our affairs in the person of Master Farad Muhammad, to whom praise is due forever. We thank him for the wise choice and a messenger Messiah to us in the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. And to the two of them, I stand before you eternally indebted for their apostle and servant, our leader, teacher, and guide today, one that the messenger said he was making this man to take his place among the people. I thank him for the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. And so I greet you again with the greeting words of peace. Salam alaikum. Thanking you all for being out. I know the week has been challenging with some of the snow. I think it's just the beginning of things to come. Always think in terms of not scrambling at the last minute for provisions if you get snowed in. Treat every day like that kind of day is coming. And you'll always have, at least something to carry you 2 or 3 days if you're snowed in or there's ice and the weather is such that the traffic is so great that even the task of just trying to get out to the corner store can be a task that would take you 2 or 3 hours. Most people are unprepared. People can only function based on the body of knowledge that they're feeding from. And we have to talk about some of that today even, as our subject is the breakdown of the black world. Our historians, men of immense intellectual ability, John Henry Clark, Dr. Chancellor Williams, even Francis Cress Welsing, and I could just go on with the great minds that have served the black world with information and history to serve us, that unfortunately only a handful of us, when you count the billions of us on the planet, only a handful of us are really taking advantage of these great historians. And their writings alone would help members of the black world to feed from a body of information that would literally change the way we think and do things. And because these writers, even warners, are too often forsaken by us, I'm reminded of the Honorable Louis Farrakhan's recent words to the black world. This is your final warning to change the way you think and change the way you act. What our psychologists have found is that most people will not change unless you can demonstrate to them a real need to change. Most people won't take a different course of action, in part because of the way that our minds have been molded. It's really a breakdown of the black world. Black, just to show you how our minds have been shaped, we're arguing now about the term black. And I remember that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said of black that black is universal. And even though Dr. Malefi Asante from our own great city has given a lot to the world of black thought, they don't see properly the Muslims that are under the leadership of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And because of that, they think we damage the black movement. Hell, we are the black movement. And I reminded him at a forum that he and I were at that the term black started with a Muslim, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. We didn't even use that term. Even those that were in the so-called movement, they were using the word Negro. Those that say, well, Elijah was really Marcus Garvey's product, then why didn't Marcus Garvey use the term black? It's called the UNIA. It's the Negro Improvement Association. When you really understand, as we talked last week about the root, going to the root of the word Negro, you can't improve a Negro. There's no way to improve a Negro because Negro comes from a term not necessarily dealing with color, but the state of your mind. And so we talked about in the breakdown of the black world, the killing of the mind of the original. And black is a generator of energy. Black can serve as a storage house for radiation emanating from the sun. When people see that it's going to be an extremely hot day, they're advised to wear bright colors, preferably white even, so that you can sort of repel the rays of light coming from the sun. But if you wear dark colors, even black, you begin to absorb the heat that's coming from the sun. Because black stores up radiation and black stores up power. Even black coal, as it turns out, is a repository for energy in the form of light coming from the sun. Black then is not a color belonging to the family of colors. We're finding now that the essence out of which all color comes started in blackness. So when you talk about the black world, a world is a sphere of mental actions. And according to what the Honorable Louis Farrakhan teaches us in the study guides, will is the faculty of conscious and or deliberate action. So he says, so will is really the mind's control over its own actions. So if the black world is breaking down, then it means that someone has broken the will of the black man, because the will is in the mind. Are you following me now? Black can't just be a fro, a dashiki, and a black power sign. We've been that route already. Huh? With your black self. We've seen that. But we're learning that black is more than just this, it's consciousness. And that black is culture, as we have to talk about your level of consciousness determines the culture. If your consciousness is increased and you have a greater sphere or field of mental awareness, then you won't be a pig eater. Huh? You're not going to find a conscious man and woman going to get some ribs. Come on, somebody. We got to get down to the simplest thing. A man can't tell you all the steps of the destruction of black civilization and know the Metu-Neger and or the hieroglyphics, as white folks call it, and all of this, and then all of a sudden he's going to get him some rib tips. Immediately, it don't match. Even Mr. Muhammad started us off. He didn't try to wean us off pork. If you were going to follow him, you had to give it up right away. And it is a restrictive law that if you're found eating pork after you have made a confession of faith to walk with him, you are excommunicated. Why? Because he knows you can't be feeding on unequaled wisdom and eating pig at the same time. Come on, somebody. Pig as a diet, according to the problem book, was the enemy's assault on the black world. So he had to stop that immediately. Now, we'll wean you off cigarettes. We'll wean you off alcohol. We'll wean you off certain things. But when it comes to the pig, if you join us on Sunday, Monday, you can't have no pig. We expect you to go home and throw out all the pig that you have in your freezer, your refrigerator, and cupboard. We're expecting you to do that. So a world is not the earth. A world is a sphere of mental activity. When God talks about destroying the world, he's talking about these systems that are set up. The banking system, right? The social system, the economic system, all of these systems, they got to be destroyed because they're coming out of the mind of somebody. So when a God talks about I can destroy the world, he knows how to break down the mind that created that world.
That's right. That's right.
You don't know how to do it. I don't know how to do it. That's why the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, you can't fathom the depths of Satan. There are black folks that will come on radio and they'll go protest and they'll say, police ain't treating us right. This is police brutality. They killed this brother unjust. They did that one unjust. We say, you know what? You're right. He did murder him. Did you know he was the devil? Did you know that his nature started on the island of Pelan? Man, I ain't trying to hear that. Now, you agree that evil's being done, and then when I tell you the source of the evil, you don't agree. Why? Because you can't fathom the depths of Satan. When the minister tells you there's a conspiracy to annihilate all, well, Brother Farrakhan, I don't think they're going that far. You know why you don't think that? Because your mind is too weak. And you can't, Farrakhan is feeding man from 100% truth. And because he's feeding from truth that's pure, that's uncut. You letting a man cut you down and cut you out of the resources. And you still complaining. You got an answer here with Farrakhan. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said at his table, he said, oh no, sister, once you exceed the thing that you rising up against, you don't complain no more. So people thought, well, Elijah, well, where are y'all on police brutality? Elijah was fighting the police before you even thought about fighting.
That's right. That's right. Yes, sir, brother minister.
At a certain point, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he rose so high into the wisdom of the living God, he said, I'm not complaining no more. If you stick with me, I haven't wrapped around your baby finger.
That's right. That's right. Very true. That's right. Bring him up, brother.
We don't want to be delivered
Right. That's right.
because we have accepted a frame of mind that has told us we don't need to change.
That's right.
We need to change him.
That's true. Yes, sir.
Even though the lesson says the prophets tried and that they did not succeed, could not reform devil.
That's right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir, brother.
Yeah.
Take your time.
So the black world had to break down. And last week I said, since the Holy Quran teaches us that Allah created everything with truth, then the mind of the original man was created with truth. In fact, what makes it original is that truth. All right? So it says the first step in breaking down the black world, which is a sphere of mental actions, is to make the original man part from truth. We got to get in between him and truth. So the traitor came with an interpretation. What's the interpretation for? To get you to begin to part with truth and take you away from the truth that had you on a mount. Because if I can get you to depart with truth, now I can shape your mind according to the lie.
Yes, yes, yes. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, sir.
If my mind is created with truth in its original form, and you can get me to depart with truth, when I lose the truth, I lose my mind. See, that's how we living right now. You killing your own brother, that's the one you're going to need by your side to get the real killer. What's wrong with you? You done lost your mind?
That's right. That's right.
A woman goes and retires to lie down, and she has a sleeping gown on that touches over her ankles to go to bed, but you got a skirt on that's almost at your navel. So you dress up to go to sleep and get undressed to go out in the public. What is the matter with you? Have you lost your mind? Some woman scantily dressed asked Sister Ava, why y'all wear all them clothes? She said, why are you undressed? Once the truth is gone, and your mind was created in truth, your mind is gone. Are y'all following me now? The enemy knew, if I can break down your mind, I can break down your world. Now I can build mine.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, brother.
So I got to get get you to depart with your own truth. And once I do that, now the strength that you operated in, because thought's going to precede an action. If the thought is strong, the action will be strong.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
If I can weaken the thoughts, I'll weaken the activity. Then when the activity that is laid out by Mr. Muhammad that only a strong man can perform, now you're entertaining a whole new train of thought, but you're trying to walk with Muhammad. You got to bow out.
Yes, sir. You can't do it. Yes, sir.
Newspapers is too much. Posts is too much. Prayer is too much. Making class is too much. Not for a strong man. It's fit for a strong man because it's all there to support his strength. Think about it.
Go ahead, brother minister.
The black world didn't get broke down 6,000 years ago. They're doing it right now. Every time they see you building something of consequence that will bring about your breakthrough, they work to break you down.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Go ahead, brother minister.
Knowledge or civilization, Mr. Muhammad teaches us, is one having knowledge
Yes, sir.
and wisdom and understanding. So if you weaken the knowledge, because everybody got to have knowledge. I mean, your body got to feed, whether it's pig or salmon. Once you get hungry, you got to eat. You get hungry enough. Well, the mind is the same way. It's got to feed on something.
Yes, sir.
So if the knowledge that you and I were created in, the knowledge that supports the real growth and strength of us as the original people, if that's taken away from you, somebody's got to replace it with something. You can't burn up a man's knowledge and then say, well, we ain't got nothing for you to learn. We don't operate on zero. So now you put some knowledge out there, but it's weaker than what you had. So if civilization is one having knowledge and you have knowledge that's weaker, the math says that's a weaker civilization. So as you feed men in that civilization, they're going to be weaker men.
Yes, sir.
Are you following now? When we talk about weakness, Mr. Muhammad said the man was made weak bone because the real backbone is morality. That moral code and righteous bearing is the only thing that can make a man upright. Are you following now? But when the bone is weak, the creature can't stand up on two legs because there's no backbone. When you have no moral code of living, you can't stand up among the people. So now the Me Too movement is pointing out a whole lot of men that put one face on in the public, but they're doing all kind of things with women behind the scenes. And now they're just telling on them one by one, and they're just adding to the list.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
They can't present, this world can't present a moral citizen that can stand the test of morality. Not all their fault, because the knowledge base in this world, the minister said they blanketed the earth with a weaker knowledge. And because they didn't take us from greater knowledge to weaker knowledge where we could tell the difference, we were born blind.
Yes, yes, sir.
That's all we had.
Yes, sir. Yes.
See, and the weaker knowledge now, as we live under him, see, white world supremacy produces what's called black pathology. He can't reign supreme unless he mess you up. He can't reign supreme and you and me be a real man.
That's right. That's right.
You know, governing our own affairs, building for ourselves and feeding our women and children and educating our own children and stuff like that. He can't be supreme if you're doing that. He can't be a God over you unless you have to go to him to provide for you. What makes him godlike is that you got to go to him to get food, clothing, shelter, education for your children. Amy said, I should have brought the chart out here. Everything we go after, we got to deal with him. And soon as you start something that don't entail him, he has to move in on it. Even in crime. He took crime and organized it. It's called organized crime. And because the nature of us is righteousness, because there's no altering Allah's creation, the Quran says. So you can trick me and use technology on me and get me, but the nature that I was created in still have not been changed. And if you saw the movie Get Out, even though they cut the head open and took that brain out and put their brain inside of there was still the essence of the person inside. Every now and then, even though they was controlling the black body, the real person tried to express himself, and the man just jumped out, get out, you know. Yeah, I mean, you can take that a lot of ways. He's saying, you better get out of here before they get you.
Yes, sir.
He could be saying to the man whose brain is inside of him, now I want you out of me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Get out. So as long as the nature of the original man and woman has not been altered, from time to time you get one of us that don't go along with the program. That's a sign that our God is still with us, even through the breakdown. But as it produces a black pathology, we begin to do things that are against the nature of us. And the minister said, anytime you're outside of the restricted area of your own nature's performance, then you perform poorly. So if your nature is righteousness and you want to be a crook, you'll be a crook, but you won't be as good as somebody whose nature is crooked. That's why more of us in jail. Well, they put more of us in jail because you ain't supposed to be doing crime. You out of your league. You don't know how to be a real crook. This man that's been over us for 6,000 years is a crook for real. You call it 100? Yeah, that's where he is. He's been doing it 6,000 years. So black pathology, beating your woman, adultery, fornication, reefer, that ain't good enough, so they putting something on it now. I was reading the cocaine death thing among us now. We done left heroin, we trying to get cocaine. They done put something on the cocaine. So we're dying in all kind of ways. It's called black pathology. And this pathology brings weight on us. So the human being is trying to survive. So what you do, you go for what you know. Know is the root term word for knowledge. You have to go to the knowledge base that you have accepted. And what our people are doing, they're running to the knowledge that they have accepted, but what they have accepted is the weaker knowledge from a weaker man in a weaker civilization. And so it's called branch knowledge. So as you take the weight of your condition and put it on the branch ain't strong enough to hold you. So we're falling and breaking down because the knowledge is too weak to get us up. I'm on heroin, and I'm going to the man that's producing the heroin. Organize it and moving it around the planet. I'm on cocaine. I'm on the marijuana now that they got sprayed that Dr. Wesley was telling us about. I'm trying to bring the weight of my condition to bear on the weaker knowledge that he's been feeding me. And it won't hold the condition. And so I'm collapsing. Are you listening to what I'm saying? Along comes Mr. Muhammad with root knowledge. Not branch knowledge, because the strength of the tree is coming from the root, not the branch. The branches are only outgrowth from something that got it started in the first place. Mr. Muhammad took us back to the beginning. So now I can take the needle out of my arm. I can bust up the bottle of whiskey. I can throw away the cigarette or the reefer or the cigar or the pipe or whatever I'm on. I got enough strength now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, brother.
With all the clinics that he got, I got enough strength now to walk away. See, there are people that are among us that can stand here and give you a testimony of how Farrakhan's preaching is what delivered them. Not all these chemicals and stuff that they got going around out here. And we need to remember what brought us here. That'll keep you from walking away. We take Islam and leave it like we brought ourselves here under the strength of our own consciousness. You ain't got no consciousness. You was unconscious till Farrakhan's preaching started reaching your ear gate. Well, I don't want to stay there no more. I'm gonna go. Where you going? Well, I'm sick of them. We sick of you, but we ain't leaving. Hell, you ain't nobody to be around. You ain't no picnic. Yeah. Please. But we're not leaving. Because when the mind reflects on where I was, how I was, and I can see that I'm no longer like that, and I didn't have the power to bring about a change in my own thinking.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Because it's root knowledge. And you go, when you see a tree, you don't even see its root. So the thing that's giving it the strength of its growth and the ability to bear fruit, you can't even see that thing. So what happens to us is you get a little bit of the messenger's teaching, you get some of the sunshine and everything, you start coming up a little bit and everything, then you think you can walk away because you only see yourself, but you don't see Farrakhan's work that got you where you are. So you think you can walk away and you think you on your own, but believe me, you find yourself departing from the root, you be departing from truth. And if your mind was created in truth and you lose the truth, you've lost your mind.
Go ahead. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Actual fact.
We're actually, since our knowledge is being taught to the people that are on the bottom, because folks who feel like they're on the top don't feel they need this. we're building a civilization right up under his. Just like they buried our cities. Our wise scientists, the Honorable Louis Farrakhan teaches us, already were foreseeing men. And so they saw an enemy coming to the planet. And said, if he gets a hold of the things that we have here, it'll make him more formidable, so we need to hide it. So we started burying our cities because the wisdom that built those cities would be buried along with it. Now, when a man walks the earth who's black and he don't see the work of black men, it starts putting your consciousness to sleep because you don't see a work that says you're something greater than what somebody else is telling you that you are. See, where we are right now, the question is, how can a black man show his worth and he ain't got a job? But hey, if he's seen as worthless, how is he ever going to qualify for a job? But when you come into your original mind, the question is, why is he looking for a job anyway? He really has what it takes to create one for himself. He really does have that. Whether you exercise it or not does not take away from the truth of it. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad worked a job before. He talked about the work that he did. But from the time he met that man, you have no record of Mr. Muhammad working the job. From the time he met that man, Mr. Muhammad said, I got a job. And he went to work at it. That doesn't mean don't go get a job. That's not what I'm teaching. But I'm saying the more we grow in this, the more we really realize the value of what we have, and we start walking in this and not walking partly in this and partly in something else, believe me, you'll make a bigger change than the one we're doing right now. An excuse is only your doubts double crossing you. Telling you of a limitation that's really self-imposed. Because when God created himself, he destroyed the impossibility. And Jesus said, then all things are possible to him that believeth. Now either that's true, or somebody lied, and then we got to modify things to say, well, no, we got to take these little, or if it's true, then we just take off. Buck wild with some ridiculous faith and go on and build something. So that's what he had to do, to make us depart from truth. Then he has to, the second step is he's got to feed us knowledge that's weaker. In 1974, we were feeding from unequal truth. By the end of 1975, because somebody came over the nation and said, stop teaching Yaqub's history. Let's get rid of message to the black man. You don't need these FOI uniforms no more. Come on, somebody in there. We had to feed on something. Then we start feeding on something else that made us weaker. I got people trying to tell me I'm going the wrong way. We should be going toward that. We've been that way already. That's where the minister was. And the minister said, I can't walk with this no more. And he walked us through what he had to walk through for 30 months. And he said, we're going back to what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught. Huh? Is that right? That's why I'm here, and that's why you're here. We went back to to root knowledge. And guess what? When you at the root, you know every branch that's on the tree. So you know how to explain it better than the people that are leaving you to go to that. Because that branch can't hold the weight of your condition. And he began to see it, his son. He said, you know what? I see now why my father had the military. You know what? I see now why my father had to do this way. That way, see, because father was dealing with a condition. You can't just blurt out what you got and not consider the condition that you blurting it out in. You got to think of the mental climate that you in. And you trying to get something across. Wow. So breaking us down is a continual process. Even as the lesson said, why does the devil keep our people illiterate? Not make them. He must keep you illiterate. And illiterate also means ignorant. I don't have to try to make you white because you look in the mirror and it's obvious you're not white. I just got to make you illiterate, which also means ignorant. That's why we are always taught ignorance is our greatest enemy. So when people try to tell you y'all just hate white, we hate ignorance and we hate the evil that white people do. That's what we hate. White supremacy, our psychoanalytic thinkers have found that white supremacy is a psychological and pathological need. I can't remain supreme if the black man starts growing into his real moral, mental, and spiritual strength. So we must be on the watch for people who can teach and train men and women of that color into their mental, moral, and spiritual strength. We got to cut them kind of teachers off. The Bible shows their making and their commission and charge in the words of God to them have dominion. And the Honorable Louis Farrakhan says that since civilization is having knowledge, then at the base of a civilization is a certain knowledge. So this civilization has a certain knowledge at its base. And at the core of that knowledge is an idea. And the idea at the core of their knowledge is having dominion. We cannot entertain any kind of knowledge. We're not making no kind of changes in the social order that makes the white man either equal with you and certainly not beneath you. That's why just the visual of Barack Obama and Michelle Obama living in the White House messed them up so bad that gun sales went through the roof, militias tripled. The number of white militias tripled. And people are thinking that when Trump got in, all this white hatred started. No, it started when Obama and them went in the White House. And it's been growing and been incubating for 8 years, been fermenting. And we're trying to figure, oh, they're just racist and that. You got some of them didn't even know they was racist till the black man got in the White House. They found out that at the base of them, I got to be in charge. Hell, I can't have it no other way. And so he works and he's determined. Our problem is we trying to get him to change his mind and heart. When it's our minds that need to change and our hearts that need to change first with one another. Relating properly to our God. Because if you love yourself enough, you'll start building for yourself. If you love yourself enough, unless you see it as necessary, you won't find your way to kill each other the way we're killing each other. That's why when the minister crafted the pledge at the Million Man March, he didn't say don't kill, but I won't shoot, I won't beat, cut, shoot, or whatever, unless in self-defense. No, it's a pathological need to be in charge. And the only way I can be in charge, you got to be at the bottom. And we find you won't stay at the bottom unless I do things that make you stumble and fall. Right. Just like that commercial. I got to make you fall where you can't get up. And so when the person falls and can't get up, they hope the daughter stops by, a niece or somebody stops by and just happen to see that they ain't heard from you all day. Maybe they need to go check on you. So Black America, we fail politically, economically, socially, everything. And we're telling white America we fail and we can't get up, and you think they're going to come pick you up when they the ones that knocked you down. The other way to break us down, they had to begin, because there was some traces of our greatness. And see, when you demonstrate through a work greater intelligence, greater wisdom, the work itself testifies, right? So he's shown us skyscrapers and everything in his city and all kind of wonders and bridges and everything, but man, when he saw the pyramids, a testimony to greatness. We didn't have to go around boasting, yeah, we used to do that. The pyramids is there as a testimony. Are you following? They just sitting there in the sand. Battle tested against sandstorms and all kinds of elements in the earth. Been there for thousands of years. They didn't build themselves, someone built them. He knows he wasn't here to do it. So he don't even call those people niggers. He knows we did it, but he just talks about the work that was done there. So when the minister was asked, how are we going to get rid of racism? He said, there ain't but one way to get rid of it, black excellence. When you become excellent, when you start doing a work that demonstrates, believe me, he can't find a way to say that word. The only one he can say that word to is the one that's under the mental framework that he gave and made that way. The Negro is a creation of the United States of America. It's not the work of God. No matter what Dr. Shockley and Dr. Jensen and others have tried to do, they even tried in the public school system with the attention deficit disorder to say that our children, there's something genetically wrong with us. And it was the beginning of trying to say that criminal activity is not a part of the genetic makeup of the white male, but criminal activity is a part of the genetic makeup of the black male. And they'll come up with certain tests to try to prove that, and they want to say that if it's genetic, then we're justified in defunding everything that will improve the conditions around the black male so that he comes up a better social creature than the one he is. Why should we spend all that when he's genetically deformed? And he's going to be a criminal anyway. You can give him a mother, a father, a good house, a good school, the Rotary Club, and everything else, and he's still going to be a crook, a dope dealer or a dope user or both. That's what they're saying, unless we lift our voice up to refute that crap. You understand? And the best way to do it is to demonstrate a work that tells the world community something different than the one that they're portraying. So they try to control things. If you look at the black folks that have won Oscars, I mean, Denzel should have really got an Oscar for Malcolm X. That was his greatest work, and Spike Lee's greatest work. They tried to push that movie to the side and gave him an Oscar for Training Day, a crooked policeman, right? Give Halle Berry, with all her great acting ability, one for being an adulteress, right? They give another one for being a maid. Just look at what they're giving the awards for. I could go on and on with the roles that are played. They're doing everything to create an image, because white images is the assault on the black world. The Sphinx obviously was a testimony against their superiority. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that the lion is the original cat. And if you study the original cat, see, they're social creatures their entire life. They basically don't hunt solo. They run in what's called a pride. And they have the families together. Everybody has a role, and they hunt together, they eat together. He said it's the original cat. And he said Allah created the lion with absolutely no fear inside of him. So the black man, the original man, crafted in the desert the body of a lion and put a black man's face on it, because he said the original man was created the same way, with absolutely no fear inside of him, because he's the maker, the owner, the cream of the planet Earth, God of the universe. Earth is headquarters for the universe. So Napoleon said, man, I'm trying to show us as superior. So he has the cannon fire off in the face of the Sphinx. That's why the nose is blown off now. But the sign is to deface black symbols and reinsert it with white symbols. And almost every white symbol that we bought into after the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's teaching of 100% truth, those symbols are coming down. In 1969, when Ebony magazine put out a black Jesus, it outraged black America. Black America was outraged that Ebony magazine had the nerve to put Jesus as a black man. Now, if I'm not, I think I'm right. Ebony mean black, don't it? Right. Come on. But just look at black people outrage against a black-owned run magazine that portrayed, and see, 69 was the right year because in Harlem, New York, a group of Christian ministers came up with what they called black liberation theology. That we should not be teaching Jesus Christ, saying he's a savior and deliverer, but using him as the very trap to keep the people from being delivered. And that's what you're doing when you made all the images white. The angels were white. When they painted on the Sistine Chapel, I mean, all the images were white. So in all the churches, every image was white, but you're talking about being, who you trying to be delivered from? Richard Allen was just trying to go to church. They told him, you can't sit down here with us. You black, you got to sit up over somewhere. So he said, rather than go through that kind of humiliation, he and Absalom Jones, they went and started their own church. So the first black church is right here in Philadelphia. Why should I have to be humiliated to go and try to serve Jesus? I didn't tell you to change Jesus from being white. I just came up in here. But see, white supremacy is a pathological need. And you can't position yourself in ways that challenge white supremacy. White supremacy says that every trait that lends itself to whiteness is what must be employed to understand it. So when we start talking about white supremacy and everything, you're talking about somebody that's saying we have to have dominion over. So now the code language is make America great again, right? Take our country back, as if we took it. If we took it, we sure didn't get what it had. All of these terms to say we're losing our grip of rulership. And so what we want to get this back. But the way to get it back is to put black folks in their place. And we're around here saying, man, we've been unemployed, we've been struggling. When did we get out of our place? But see, we got out of our place when a black family went in the White House. See, to the mind of a white supremacist, man, you don't belong there. So now, whatever work you did while you were there, we got to undo it. We don't care how destructive it is. We can't allow history of this country to be written and a black man was in the line of presidents and he did a work and his policies remain over the American people. We got to undo that. And they're trying to do it while not making themselves look like the racists that they are in that, or the white supremacists that they are, okay? So we got the Sphinx, we got the pyramid, we have the Black Madonna, portrayed in many places throughout Europe. But the nativity that they brought us under, right, was a white woman with a child. Whether they white or black, I don't care if you're a black woman born, if you're born 2,000 years ago, and you give birth, when the child is in the womb, that's the only environment that the child has. And an environment will color your nature. Which is why Mr. Muhammad says 75% of my work is with the woman, the female, because if she's really giving birth to the members of the nation, her state of mind, the quality of her spirit becomes the environment that the child is being grown. While the brain is being formed, the woman is writing a script on that brain. So if a man is beating her, white or black, if a man is mistreating her, white or black, that's being written right onto the child. See, we don't understand things about creation because our enemies never taught us that. The first ones of us that were brought over, yeah, we were beaten, raped, and all of that. But what they did, they made sure that they put fear in the woman so that the child would grow up in a womb, environmentally speaking, characterized with fear. We came out fearful as men. That's the way we could sit hundreds of years with every injustice happening around us, and we were still just shuffling and going along. Because the science of how we were made, first they socialize you, then they genetically infuse upon you, because the environment that you're growing up in the womb is poisoned now with a fake reality. You talk about fake news. So if we're going to produce a civilization of giants, they can't just be smart, they got to be courageous. They can't just be spiritually endowed, they got to be militarily infused, because we're people at war. We crazy as hell. When you lose your mind as a black man, you want to go out, look wild, act wild, smoke and do what you want, cuss anybody who you want and everything, and then you want the people to treat you like a civilized man. Well, the police wasn't nice to me. No, they shouldn't gun you down. They shouldn't. But when you at war, would you tell your soldiers to go out and act any way around the enemy? No, you don't want Mr. Muhammad's teaching. You don't want Farrakhan's guidance and leadership. You want to act like a nigga, but you want somebody to treat you like a civilized man. You at war, black man, and you got to conduct yourself a certain way. You can't go out acting savage and everything. You say, well, white boys can do it and that. You in his world, man. You want a world to treat you fair, you're going to have to make it. And we having a hell of a time just trying to do that because we can't be fair to ourselves. 1 out of every 3 that the minister teaches is really an enemy to him. That's a whole lot of people. Because we were made enemies to self and kind. So my last point, as we close, because there had to be a slave maker. Then nobody just find us and then we started picking cotton. Huh? That's the way they teach you that neat little history. Well, they had brought you up on ships and then you were just going into servitude. You just let yourself be sold and all that. No, it didn't happen that way. The first folks they brought over here were not happy campers. They had to break you down to make you a slave. And even that wasn't foolproof. When you read about the slave revolts and things, I mean, the church where Dylan Roof shot 9 people up in Bible study. Denmark Vesey belonged to that church. And when Denmark Vesey's plot to kill the slave masters, the slave traders, the auctioneers, take over Charleston, South Carolina, which was the largest slave port of its time, a Negro went and told, because they had completely had the white man fooled. Everybody acting went along with the program, looked like they was happy slaves and everything, but they was plotting, they was getting ready to get them. But they had to get them in a way that they could completely take over. And a Negro went and told on them. You go plan something, somebody will go tell on you. And they hung Denmark Vesey. They hung those that were named, that plotted with him, right? And the preacher of the church fled. And he got to Philadelphia. And so they named a church after him. It's right on Ridge now, Morris Brown. But see, they were the AME faith. I mean, we could go on and on with stories about how we had to navigate ourselves not only to deal with our open enemies, we had to deal with each other, whose minds have been, because black is not color, it's consciousness. And you know, when somebody's unconscious, they bump into you because they can't really see you. They can't see themselves. You can't see yourself when you're unconscious. So you're out, you're wild and everything, you're smoking wet, you're doing stuff, and you want somebody to treat you, you can't even see yourself. And because they couldn't break us down to ensure that they could get the level of cooperation because of the different slave revolts, they finally started taking us when we were babies. And you raise the baby on a studied diet of ignorance and fear. And he grows up learning how to serve. Now you got yourself a 100% slave. That's right. That man on, what was it, Django? Unchained. He's trying to figure out, you know, me and my dad, we had, 1,000 slaves? But he was trying to figure out, there was only 2 white people. How did they stay alive with 1,000 slaves? Because you made a perfect slave. These were all raised from when they were babies. They would never do anything to you. It's what made Nat Turner's rising so great among white people. They talked about it more than we did. I don't think he killed more than 80 or 90 of them before they got him, but it's just the fact that we decided we was going and just outright killing them. I mean, that's a frightening thing. It to the white world, they was talking about it everywhere. Yeah, so they took us when we were babies. Now, this part, you have to think about what I'm saying now, because the level of consciousness that you have will determine your culture. You know, if my level of consciousness, just going to school doesn't give you consciousness now. You know, I used to tell somebody, you think people who in the street get high go up on some of these college campuses, you know, and you'll see, you think gangs do something in the discipline of their own members. And I can remember going to meetings and seeing a lot of people get handled in gang meetings in the south side of Chicago, and I'd be in meetings, man, it'd be 8,000, 9,000 people in the meeting. And by the time David Boxdale would come out, man, and find out you didn't handle your neighborhood right, or I saw people really get handled. But man, hazing and stuff in college, and what they do to each other to pledge for these fraternities, and just so you could belong. We got a case now. So I don't want you to think just getting book learning necessarily gives you consciousness. We should all get knowledge, but the ministers say what the black world is lacking is requisite knowledge. Requisite knowledge is knowledge you can really take and begin to build something to provide for your needs. But we get PhDs and we're still going to somebody else for everything that we need. That shows we got knowledge, but it's so weak. It's not requisite. So our level of consciousness will determine our culture. I see people say, well, no, we just need to get back with Mother Africa. Now, I watch a lot of movies made in Africa. Shoot, they riding better than I'm riding. They living in townhomes and things, and they're caught up in a lot of European. Not one African woman that I've seen in these movies wearing a fro.
Right.
None of them wearing dashikis. They got short skirts on. They wearing stilettos. The people, I'm just telling you this. You sit up here with some picture of Africa. You need to watch some of these movies and how folks are living over. They're westernizing everything.
Right.
So you can't just geographically go back to Africa and the magic is going to happen. Mr. Muhammad knew exactly what he was doing. No, we got the bill right here, because no matter where you go, they're not going to leave you alone. You got the bill right here. And the way that he's bringing us up in North America has something to do with how he saw the way they broke us down. They've trained us to react to a predetermined set of cues. A cue, just like a cue ball on the pool table, that's the only one that you can hit to hit the other balls in and whatever. The cue is the signal to signal you to go into some kind of action. So he can just put cues out there and start getting a reaction from Black America. Just put a cue out there, and you'll start attacking anybody black without investigation. He can put cues out there and make you go after certain things that may not even be of your best interest. But he has a set of predetermined cues out there that will get us to fight certain things, and we'll stay away from other things. They're even saying now that while Trump is bantering over here, and that's a cue, and so we run over there and say, oh, he's talking racism. He's making policies.
Right.
He's signing stuff that's not getting in the news. Did you know all these federal judge appointments he's been making? Then you wonder why your cousin is going to be sent up and never seen again and all this kind of stuff. He's putting judges in right now. The day the man was inaugurated, there was 692 government positions that were still vacant. He really didn't have a government. He didn't want the ones that Obama had in, so who has he put in those places? Because the gang he brought with him, they got definite ideas about how they want to run things. Yeah, we're in a hell of a fight. And what we have found of the human being is that once he frames your mind, and our minds operate in certain concepts. I know this because I'm sitting over a branch of a civil rights organization, so I know I'm in these meetings, I know how we think. Well, we must protest this, we got to speak out on that, we have to, yes, we do, but you know, we're operating with concepts that we can change this man's mind and heart. And there's no talk about taking the reins ourselves and beginning to see what we're taught. I mean, the evidence is if you're in schools, whether they're public or chartered or whatever, if you're not producing leadership that's operating with requisite knowledge, none of them is giving us what we need.
That's right. Come on.
And we're not even discussing that. We're discussing funding. We should fight funding if you're going to take my tax dollar and spend it somewhere else in there. But what are you funding when you get it?
Good question.
Now, we should be talking the curriculum of what these children are being taught. And if you start at the beginning, first they got to learn to read and write. Because they found out, man, we're getting through these schools, we can't even read and write. 390-something 200,000 people in Philadelphia can't even fill out an application for a job. That's an institutional failure. And the minister warned us about how they're dumbing down American citizens. They don't need you no more. These people are so crafty now that they can keep you living at a superficial level so that you never pursue deeper life questions. And you know what becomes the essence of life? Going to the mall, picking up extra things. And that's how they got us in consumerism. And they're teaching you just being able to purchase something with your credit card off the shelf is you're getting the essence of life. This, you're talking about technology at the highest level. Are you following? I'm not saying you shouldn't take some of your hard-earned dollars and get things that you need and even things that you like, but that ain't the essence of life. So now, rather than going to the library, looking up things that you're personally researching, no, we're going to meet at the mall. And so you're basically, you're buying things and drinking Slurpees and eating fast food. That's pastime of the American citizen. And even whites are falling behind Asians, because when you walk around those malls, you'll see certain Asians, and they'll keep things out that are detrimental to their group, and I don't blame them. So years ago, when they wanted to build that casino next to Chinatown, you saw the folks in Chinatown rise up, hell no, you can't build that here. Huh? Because Asians gamble. As much money as they make, they have a propensity to gamble, so they don't want that near them. So now we're saying, well, hell, these stop and goes ain't working for us. Yeah. But even in that, if we sit down and don't cooperate with anything that's over us, and I'm talking about maybe 48 hours, you got folks ready to negotiate. That's how dependent this white world is on your and my ignorant state. Mr. Muhammad teaching us against smoking cigarettes, the carcinogens that are in there, can shut down a whole industry.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're right.
Alcohol, you could shut down a whole industry.
Right. Right.
Drugs, I mean the trillions that are made, drugs is making more than the GDP of nations combined, industrialized nations combined. That doesn't mean you don't have needs, but what Mr. Muhammad was showing us and what the Honorable Louis Farrakhan has shown us, you don't have a need God can't fulfill. That's right. That's right. But you don't understand when I get me some drugs, man, I'm really there. God can take you there. Come on. We have the wrong perspective. And what happens when you begin to feed on truth, your perspective changes. That's right. That's right. Why does it change? Because you change. Yes, sir. See, prayer is never designed to change circumstances. It was always designed to change you. And then when you get up from your prayer changed, it begins to change the circumstances and the dynamic that you're operating in. That's right. That's right. And what we have done, because when we're fed any kind of knowledge, any kind of truth that don't fit the concepts that we live by, we reject it. We're not open to it. And so when we operate with the concepts that we have been given, and it has molded and shaped our minds that way, then we stay in the same mode. So you say, struggle continues. Why does it have to continue? Who are you struggling against that it's got to continue? See, you're not going to even ask them kind of questions. You know why? Because you're in a certain frame of mind and you operating with certain concepts, and you're not interested in anything that don't fit the conceptual framework of what you've been given as a black man. You're supposed to just do this. You're supposed to speak out against that. We must resist this, that, and the other. But somebody says, you know what? Why don't we just build our own? But we're not going to get 40 million people to just turn and start building their own. Why not? Are they mad enough? Are they hurting enough? How bad do they want liberation? Why are we in these houses of worship talking about we want deliverance? Then when it comes and there's some steps we could take toward real deliverance and that, we're rejecting it. I see why his own received him not. I see how the light shined in the darkness, but the darkness comprehended it not. The only thing that can comprehend a concept is the mind. And when you say the darkness didn't comprehend, that means the mind is colored with darkness. And when you colored with darkness, man, you can't see, so you can't intellectually calculate. The only way you can move in complete darkness is through your feelings. And that's how we live. And we will live that way until we rise above emotions into the thinking of God. Thank you for listening. Assalamu alaikum. If you're out for your first time, second time, third or fourth, let me just see by show of hands if you're out for your first time, never been out with us. Thank you so much for being out with us today. All praises due to Allah. You know, we're here as students of the life-giving teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad under the leadership of the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. And our real job is to try to change minds and hearts. That's why we have to talk, because you don't get minds to change unless they're taught something that gives them something to think on. They don't have to accept it, but at least think on it. And think of what you have been using to better your situation and condition, and see, is it working? And if not, are you open to considering something else that may be working for you? We believe in Jesus. We just don't believe that the European is in charge of him. Right? So he's not in charge of his image. And we just heard the minister in Washington, D.C., if you believe in Jesus, you got the right name. You got the right man, but do you have the right identity? They call us black identity extremists. I would say to take a man from a grand position of being ruler of the heavens and the earth and making him a slave, that's extreme. Ain't no way to stand up, but to be a little bit more extreme than we've been. It's extreme for us to start putting trucks on the road and it's food that we're growing and bringing to our people. It's extreme for us to begin to open up the needle factories and begin to make our own pillowcases and sheets. And when you start talking about what we're not making and what we can make, this show you how far this thing have gone. We sitting around in need and we got to go to somebody else for everything that we need. And we trying to tell somebody else what to do. No. So the Honorable Louis Farrakhan is absolutely preaching liberation. And liberation is not hatred of whites, but you should hate being in a dependent state on them. You hate being dependent on anybody after you've grown, because there's something in you telling you that you should be doing a lot more for yourself, right? And you can feel it around the people that you're depending on, that they want to help you. They looking for, but damn, man, come on. You know, I can't just let you just lay up here. And we found that you can't enlist the help of God without you enlisting in the thing yourself. In other words, you can't sit down and do nothing and expect God to help you. You can't. So all these prayers and different things, he expects you to get up and do something. And when you do it, then you have a right, since you prayed to him, to expect his help. You have a right to do that. Don't call me and wake me up. I was asleep. Could have just stayed there, but you woke me up. Then you said, pray to you, and then get up in my name, and let's go to work. But don't pray and then just sit down and expect me to do it. I cannot do it without God, but he will not do it without me. So if you wonder why something happened for you, since he's waiting on us. We're not waiting on him. He's already come. He's already present. And like the minister has said more than once, either he's God or he's not. We know we in a hell of a situation. This man got us trapped at all sides, as the Quran says. From the left, from the right, before us, behind us. He's controlling the books. He's controlling the narrative on television. He's controlling our children. We sitting around talking about we need to talk to the youth. And every youth got here through two people. It's not a youth out there that didn't get here through two people. Whether they together or not makes no difference. What do they have to say about it? And do they say anything to the... Imagine if everybody said, well, look, I can't do nothing about the boy down the street. I can't do nothing about the boy that's in Cincinnati, Ohio. But I got two boys. Let me do something about them. I got a daughter I can do something about. What if everybody just knuckled down to that? Well, me and the mother or me and the father couldn't get along, but we're going to make sure these children are right. I'm going to make sure he ain't a dope dealer, a dope user, a rapist, right? A murderer, a stick-up man, and all this. Man, we would start reducing a lot of the murder. Just with us getting involved. Why should I have to go cold call to find somebody else's son? We're willing to help, but man, we need team players. Where does this boy living? Oh, he lives down the street. Does he pay the mortgage there? So somebody's paying the money. You just letting him run and do whatever the hell he want? I'm telling you, anybody know Bertha Gilkey, a black woman in St. Louis? She was the tenant manager of the projects in St. Louis. And they started a program where everybody in that tenant dwelling had to be on the lease. Okay, so you got your daughter living with you, and then she got a boy that he getting her pregnant. You got the baby with you. As soon as the baby came home, they had to put the baby on the lease. Why does she do that? So if anybody in that tenant dwelling is causing hell in this project, everybody in that tenant gets put out. Boy, you saw them mothers go to work, slap them knuckleheads upside the head. Damn it, you better stop hanging out there cussing people out, robbing and stuff like that. The black woman got on her post and got them men. Wasn't a man living in there, because the way they designed these project life, you can't have a man in your life and then have the government helping you. That's a design. And that was the first. They cleaned that project up so quick and so good that they turned the tenant dwellings into condos. Now the people that was so-called project tenants became owners. And the boys that those women couldn't get together, they sent them down south. They put them out, but they got them off that lease. Yeah, and our former captain, may Allah be pleased with him, Brother Gregory, he was down with that program. He and I used to talk about it. Said, yeah, they tightened that thing up. Even Brother Sharif, when they was doing projects and that, he said, no, he agreed with the ID thing. You got to crunch down. You can't hold nothing together. You ain't got no strong law. You need a law to bring us together. You can't sweetheart us into what we need to get. Mr. Muhammad didn't play with us. Am I telling the truth? Oh, well, you know, the brother's poor. He was on heroin and that. Man, you was expected to get off pork, heroin, everything. Take some Muhammad Speaks. You got stronger. Mr. Muhammad didn't break us down. He was building us up. We're around complaining. He's breaking us down. Hell, he was building us up. We got a greater history with people that was on drugs, alcohol, hardly no schooling. Hell, he started out only 4 years in the public school system. We had a stronger nation then of determined men and women. We're strong now in intellect and all of that, but we need some determination. We can make this thing happen. I know my leader and teacher is looking for that kind of determination because he's a product of that. We here because of the determination of an FOI named Louis Farrakhan. In fact, he's the quintessential FOI. Laser beam focus. So, you know, he's extended an invitation to Islam as taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Because you're running into a lot of Islam and a lot of teachings. Some better than others. But the minister said it's the beauty of the life of Muhammad that makes people want to come to Islam. And by the time they come to try to connect their life with the life of Muhammad, they run into us with a whole lot of other stuff that we telling them they got to do. But when you get the book, The Life of Muhammad, and read it, you don't find him doing none of these things. All these things we telling them. So, you know, Islam is taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. We believe that it absolutely will bring the transformative powers in your life. It makes Islam work today for present day realities. 1400 years ago, just Muhammad and the revelation of the Quran did it. With Muhammad and the revelation of the Quran only, we killing each other in mosque.
That's right. Yes, sir.
We're up fighting each other, blowing each other up.
Yes, sir.
So it's obvious we need something in addition to that, to the Quran. And that we need an understanding that will help us apply that wisdom of that great book in Revelation in a way that we can see transformation going on with us in North America. We believe that happened under the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. We believe we see that happening under the Honorable Louis Farrakhan's leadership. And if what we have is weaker than what's there, then why do they shut down television and whole societies plug in to Minister Farrakhan when he's in Iran, when he's traveling through the Middle East and that? They didn't grow up like us, so they're not entertaining a fool coming to talk to them. They know he's got something to say. And they obviously want to hear. You don't shut down TV networks and that to hear a man on that wide a scale. So, you know, if you see yourself as being a part of this, you're welcome to come on and join and be a part of his family right here in Philadelphia. You know, and you can do that by coming up, shaking my hand. It's not his, but you know, we do our best to join you up with that. Come on. Allahu Akbar. How you doing, black man? How you doing? What's your name?
Raymond Vincent Ferrer.
Brother Raymond?
Raymond Ferrer.
Raymond Farrell. Come on, give it up for him, brother. Come on, black man. Have a seat right there, okay? Come on. How you doing, black man? What's your name, sir?
Henry Sancho. Henry, Brother Henry.
Brother Henry. Brother Henry, man, thank you so much for being out with us, all right? Come on, have a seat. Brother Hassan's going to get you up. If there's any women, you know, we invite you to come on and be a part of this. I mean, we're here to learn. And we're still studying and we're still learning. We believe that the real strength of us is in the mind. And what we're fighting for is our minds. That's what Mr. Muhammad taught us, that the battle in the sky is the battle for the minds of our people. And man, once the mind is together, believe me, you start feeding on the right thing, that mind that was broken down will start building back up. And you'll find that us building up don't mean no harm to nobody else. Loving yourself don't mean you got to hate white, yellow, brown, or anybody else on the planet. But we should not love everybody and have no love for ourselves, because he teaches us nobody can trust our love if we don't love ourselves, okay? Okay, so we're going to take up a public offering very quickly. So we're going to ask you to give and help us with 20, 50, 100. You can make a check out to the Nation of Islam, but we need your financial support to help us here. Brother Sabir is starting us off. $100 coming from Brother Divine. Come on, black man, come on.